Čau! Laipni lūgt Domofonā. Mani sauc Jūlijs. Šis podcasts būs nedaudz īpašs ar to, ka saruna notiks angļu valodā ar britu mūziķu mākslinieku Ned Stranger, manu draugu. Hi!
Julius, good to see you.
Good to see you too, man. How are you?
I'm very well. I'm dressed for a run.
Yeah, I can tell.
So I'll be running back across Riga today home after a lovely chat. So yeah.
Cool. Nice. So you call Riga home now? This is
so well picked up.
I know.
Yeah.
Smooth transition into
yes.
Yeah.
Well, so I've been here since November with a bit of a break over Christmas where I went to Paris to do some recording.
Okay.
And I feel like I'm settled into the place as much as you could do when you're not allowed out for 2 months of that period. But yeah, it's really, really cool city. So,
what were you recording in Paris?
My first EP.
Okay.
So I've only released 2 songs from it, and I mean it is going to be a series of singles, and then it's also an EP now. but it's kind of electro-pop style, and I'm now taking a step back from that again and just exploring the classical guitar and the voice. So a bit different, but yeah.
All right.
Really fun.
So the electro-pop approach, is that something new?
New, yeah. So I wanted to step away from acoustic indie folk as a genre and just try something a bit different. Mm-hmm. And the guy I recorded with in Paris is a really big fan of analog synths and kind of old electronic artists in Paris and France.
Yeah, of course.
So yeah, a bit of experimental stuff there.
Cool.
For me.
Why don't we like start from the beginning? So tell our listeners where you're from.
Yes.
And yeah, let's start with that.
Yeah, so I'm from Brighton, basically, which is the south coast of England. Mm. And I grew up there for 18 years, and it was only around the age of 14 that I got into songwriting and playing the guitar. Mm-hmm. So my granddad found the guitar in his attic. And it was this old classical guitar, quite battered. And I think he thought it was my dad's old one from university. So he sort of asked my dad, and my dad took it anyway, even though it wasn't. So I don't know who it belongs to, but I took it myself and spent the next 5 years. So basically my teenage years going around the countryside, writing songs, listening to a lot of Muse and Radiohead and metal and all that stuff, and just trying to write like those people and basically teach myself songwriting. And then I went to university to do a law degree, complete random step in a different direction. But I also met my bandmates in the band I'm still playing in August and After. And we spent the next 3 years of university just like co-writing and gigging all the time, moved to London together, continued that. And so I lived in London for a few years, doing a bit of work, a lot of music. And then I just felt quite restless. I'd been in the UK my whole life. I speak French because my mum's mum was French.
Your grandmother?
So my grandmother, yes. Yeah. My grandmother on my mum's side. My babushka, is what the Russians would say. Yeah. So I spoke French, and I spoke a bit of German as well from school. And I wanted to spend more time abroad learning languages. So I actually moved to Berlin last year for 8 months just to try that out. That was really cool. Obviously got exposed to a lot of electronic music, which slightly explains the new direction.
Yeah.
And then my girlfriend is Latvian. So she's also lived in the UK for many years, but she wanted to come back and spend some time here as well. And we just decided to spend at least the winter here to explore a little bit. And yeah, when COVID happened, we thought we'd stay on longer, and it's really nice, really enjoying it.
Cool.
Yeah.
How did you decide to do law?
I've been thinking about this a lot recently. I don't think I'm much of a risk taker. And especially when I was growing up, there was nobody that sat me down and said, you're obviously really passionate about music. And we think you should explore that in a lot more depth. And here are several ways you could work in the music industry, whether you're being a songwriter or an artist or a session person. Basically, there was never a conversation about that. It was always, law would be a secure career. And I just kind of gravitated towards that. And yeah, I don't know. There were a lot of things I enjoyed studying at school, and they sort of averaged out into doing a law degree.
Okay.
But part of me regrets not just going much deeper into music a lot earlier and studying, because however much you can learn songwriting from just listening and, almost copying what people are doing and then doing your own spin on it, there are so many rules that I don't know about, and it'd be interesting to learn what they are so I can understand whether or not I'm breaking them.
Yeah.
So it's a good question. The answer is I don't know.
Right.
That's the long answer, but the short answer is I don't know.
Did you work in the area? Like, you know,
As a lawyer?
Yeah.
No, I did a few internships.
Okay.
And I think the thing that made me realize that I definitely shouldn't be going into it as a career was whenever I walked into a law firm for an interview or whatever, I always felt a little bit like I was walking into the lion's den, and I had to put on a bit of a front. And it was just this realization that why should I be pretending to be someone I'm not to get a job? That's ridiculous. Yeah. So it was quite obvious to me. And
cool. So, but you always had, you know, August and After on the side.
Yes.
I don't want to say on the side.
No. It was the other way around, if anything. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So August and After was my main project from the time I left university until very recently. And it's only when, as a band, we took a bit of a step back because we were all doing different things. I started traveling. My bandmate from uni, he works for the civil service in the UK. So he does a government job working in climate change. So that's, you know, taking a lot of his time at the moment, and he's really enjoying that. And obviously it puts music into perspective a little bit in a good way. But I took that time to really start exploring my own songwriting. I was writing way more songs than we had time for in the band anyway. So I wanted to record some of them, and it's now August and After sort of, we've still got some songs to come out this year, but I'm putting a lot of my focus now on my solo project and trying to get it off the ground.
All right. So in August and After, it's just you and the other guy. What's his name?
Vedantha.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah. I can't actually pronounce his name properly. It's like, it means wisdom in Sanskrit or something. But apparently even he can't really pronounce it. Only his mum can pronounce it properly.
Does he have like a abbreviated version of his name? Like a nickname?
People used to just call him V.
V.
Yeah,
right.
but I refused. I was Vedantha.
Yeah.
In my accent, in my very British, like.
Yeah.
But no, so it was just the two of us for a while. And then we met our viola player, Jordan, who plays on a lot of our stuff, but and sort of was one of, I guess we were a trio for a few years, but she was also doing a lot of other musical things, and she does a lot of arranging and session work. So she went off to sort of focus on that, and she'll come back now and then for some recording, but it really is back to being the two of us, which is quite nice. I think we've got a good songwriting dynamic. Yeah,
I was going to ask, like, how would you compare working with another person and writing songs with another person versus, you know, being solo?
It's a really good question. So I've never really sat in a room, even with him, and started a song together. So there's a whole sort of dimension of the songwriting industry that I don't have much experience in.
Which is like working in a studio with...
imagining like 4 or 5 people sat around in a room with instruments being like, right, let's write a song. I've not had that. I've had, here is a song idea that I've basically already written. How can I make it better?
Yeah.
And so then I think it really helps because you've got the same point of validation all the way through. I can always come to him and know that I'll get advice that pushes it in the same direction. Whereas now, working on my own, I'm going to various different people for advice, and you know, I'm asking you, I'm asking other people, well, what do you think of this new song? And it's allowing me to explore a lot more things, but I don't think I'm going to have like a consistent sound for a while. And I think that's a good thing. Like right now, I'm more focused on improving and exploring and developing than I am on like building a massive audience. I just don't think I'm ready as a solo artist.
Yeah, that's one of the risks when you work alone. It's really easy to, if you don't have anyone to bounce your ideas with, it's really easy to go into like this tunnel vision kind of thing where all your songs start to sound the same.
Yes.
More or less.
Yeah.
Like I've had that before as well. When I wrote songs, there was like this finger position that I would always heavily rely on. And then to me, when I write the songs, they don't sound the same to me. But then I give it to someone who's not a musician, just, you know, like a listener. And they're like, this sounds the same. And I'm like, damn. You know?
But it's so different. I mean, it's
it's so different. Yeah.
No, I think, again, at the moment, I've also got a mixture of songs that I started writing 2-3 years ago and songs that I started writing this week. And that's helping me. I'm not doing them in a chronological order. I'm sort of jumping in between. And I've started this thing now, as you've probably seen, where I'm putting out a new song every week. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be finished, but it's it's about forcing myself to show more ideas and get more feedback.
Yeah.
But some of them are like very, very new, and some of them are very, very old. And it's quite nice because I will have written different music 2 years ago to what I'm doing now. I'm not relying on the same. I've got the same thing where there's a chord I keep coming back to in all my songs now. Yeah, which is cool.
Yeah, cool. I guess the cool thing about what you're doing is the way that you challenge yourself with writing a new song every week. I mean, it's really candid, it's those are raw ideas that, and you don't give yourself too much time to polish ideas, because sometimes I struggle with that. When I have an idea, I've had it for a very long time, but sometimes I find it hard to find a point where I should stop, thinking about the song and trying to kind of improve it. You just have to tell yourself at some point that it is what it is, regardless of how polished it is or how raw, which is cool. I think that's something every songwriter should do. Try to challenge themselves.
Well, it's interesting as well. Like, you don't know what is a good idea until you hear various people's thoughts on it. And I put up a song. So I started writing a song, and on Instagram I put up the first attempts of trying to write the song. So I was like, here is a video of me coming up with the idea. And it was really early in the process, quite interesting. And what I was coming up with, I just wasn't that into. I was worried it sounded a bit generic. The lyrics didn't really have a strong enough theme. But obviously, because I had to put it up, I put it up on YouTube. And I got a call actually last night from a guy who used to work at Virgin Records and had an imprint at Virgin, and he was like, I absolutely love the song. Can you send me over some stems and I could work with them? And I have no idea if it'll go anywhere, but it's just really cool that what I thought was a bit of I don't know where this is going, somebody saw and was like, this is I can see some potential here. And it's quite funny. You just don't know. I think more like serendipitous things will happen as a result of doing it every week than if I saved things back and did one album every 2 years or something,
But just for the sake of do you set yourself any assignments for every song that you do every week? Like, do you decide one week that I'm gonna write a love song, for example, without mentioning the word love, or do you kind of set these little obstacles in your mind when you write music?
It's a good question, because I don't really specifically, but I'm probably going to have to when I start running out of ideas that I've got now. What I do is I have a list of titles that I want to write. So I know that I want to write a song called, I don't know, like one of the songs on my list is the phrase "breath on glass." I just love that phrase, and I think that could make a really beautiful song about something, about whether it's like impermanence or people leaving messages for each other or whatever. So I have like almost a task to write a song with that title, but it's never very like specific to write a song about this or write a song in this key. But I think I might start trying that and see where that takes me.
I was going to ask about your lyric writing process, actually. So you're saying that lately, most of the time, you start with the title.
Yes.
And then you try to kind of expand on that idea. What comes easier for you? Is it the lyrics or the instrumental part? Or do those two things go hand in hand?
Yeah, they definitely go hand in hand. Like I go through phases of having a lot of one or a lot of the other. And I mean, at the moment, I'm probably coming up with more lyrics than I am coming up with melodies. But 6 months ago, it was totally the opposite. I was really struggling. And I even had songs that I'd written, and I was really happy with the melody and the sort of instrument parts. And I was writing on the piano as well. So I'd have like a piano part, and I'd think, this all fits together really nicely. But the lyrics just aren't specifically about something. I know that they're not strong enough. And even when you've got the beginnings of an idea, that can be even harder because you're being pulled in one direction, but it's not the right one. So at the moment, I'm now in the lyric phase, and I'm relying on coming up with more hooks. And it's interesting; it changes over time. But when it works, it's definitely hand in hand. I'll sing something with a phrase, and that will be the basis of the song.
Why do you think you have those phases? Why do you think you have those phases where you're more into lyrics and then you're more into instrumentals? What is that? Is it dependent on the music that you listen to, or just everyday life? Or?
I think it's probably linked to how much I'm reading or listening at the time. Okay. So I imagine that I haven't really thought about it in detail, but I do go through phases of reading where I'm either reading fiction or non-fiction. And I imagine the times of fiction are the times where I'm coming up with, a richer bank of ideas for lyrics as well.
Okay.
I'm not certain about that. Also, though, I think I just, by nature, I get a bit, I want to change. Okay. So I probably in my mind, I'll be like, you've had a lot of like thinking about lyrics recently. Why don't you have a bit of a change of, obviously that happens unconsciously. Yeah. But, so it might be a mix of those things.
Of course. Yeah, of course it happens unconsciously because you just want to change something up and make it interesting. And you want to keep up that, level of, curiosity.
Exactly.
Every time you develop an idea, once you get to the point where you've realized that you've actually managed to get the idea out of your head into, the physical world.
Yes,
That, the satisfaction that you get from that's pretty much why I write music, is because, when you're so curious about an idea and you actually get to develop it, there's like this little sense of ecstasy.
That's so true,
Yeah, where it actually sounds better when you've put it out than it did in your head. Or once you do put it out, you have so many other ideas that pop into your mind, which is really cool. Growing up, you mentioned bands like Radiohead and Muse, and what else was there?
Bit of Metallica.
Yeah. Did you go through phases of like bands or genres?
I definitely had, before everything started, I definitely had like a pop punk phase. So I was thinking about this yesterday on another run. I don't know why, but it was, I know that's it. It's because I was listening to another podcast where the script were being interviewed for And the Writer Is, which is a really, really interesting podcast if you haven't heard. And they were talking about their influences growing up and how, for him, he almost rebelled against what all his siblings were listening to and his parents. And for me, the exact moment that I first heard non-classical music was being shown In Too Deep by Sum 41 by a friend of my sister's. I think I was just like playing at his house and we were in his room and he was like, have you ever heard this kind of music before? And I was like, no, that is amazing. And that started a sort of pop punk, Blink-182, Green Day kind of phase. And then that morphed into the Muse and Radiohead that my dad was like listening to at the time, and a lot of things like Placebo. And then I kind of discovered metal, and I'm not entirely sure where that even came from. Possibly one of my sisters, because I got into Metallica, and then I was like, this is the most amazing music. I just want to be a guitarist and do those solos and Kirk Hammett and stuff. And then when I went to university and met Vedantha, that's when I got into indie folk, which I had no idea about as a genre until I really... It did sort of happen in stages like that.
All right. So you mentioned that there was a point where you started listening to non-classical music. Does that mean that you grew up listening to classical music all the time?
Before that, yes. And because I was playing the violin as my main instrument, that was... I always knew that even when I was playing the violin, I was like, I want to play other stuff. And the response of like my parents and my teacher at the time was like, maybe you need to learn some jazz. And I just had no one was like, maybe you need to change instrument. Discover the guitar. But that is basically what I think my mind was wanting. But I was listening to a lot of that, and I was singing in choirs and playing in orchestras and stuff. So I was always exposed to a lot of classical music. And then I had a few years where I sort of, almost ignored it to like taking all this new stuff I was getting, like the rock music basically. And then I returned to it again and just appreciated it a lot more with context. So it's strange. I don't know how I managed to kind of ignore whole sections of music for as long as I did, but you
know what I just realized? I've never seen a singer sing and play the violin at the same time. I guess it's pretty impossible, isn't it? So
at
the same time. I mean,
no, exactly. It's exactly the same time. I think so. This was always a bit difficult for us in the band because we'd have 3-part harmonies, but whenever Jordan was singing, she couldn't be playing the viola for the same reason, and I don't think we ever tried. So I think you're right. Yeah, it's unusual.
That's a stupid question. I mean, like if you're playing the violin, your ear is next to the instrument.
It would not be very
how do you keep
friendly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Unless you have like a plastic barrier like in front of your face between the instrument, but that's just stupid.
Or is it?
Yeah.
Discuss.
So when you went to university and you lived in England, did you perform much?
Yes, I did actually. I went to uni kind of wanting to gig all the time because, again, for some reason growing up, the idea of finding gigs was really difficult. And I think it's because I didn't grow up in a city. I sort of grew up outside. So I didn't grow up in Brighton. I grew up in a village near Brighton called Lancing. Biggest village in the UK, according to Wikipedia.
Wow. It's like on the border of becoming a town.
Exactly. Yeah. It's pretty exciting. But it was still pretty small. There wasn't really a live music scene there. Yeah. So we'd do our gigs in Brighton, but it was just harder to find gigs for like a kind of weird... so I was in a band at school and we were kind of like this... I don't know how to describe it. It was like a cross between indie and progressive metal, but none of the above.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, very, very raw, and it was fun, but we didn't play a lot. So when I went to uni, I was like, I want to play as many gigs as possible, and that's what I want to get out of the degree. I didn't really, even going there, I didn't really care about the law. Yeah. I was just like, where can I play music? And the way it works in Cambridge is there's like a lot of different colleges, and they all have student bars, and they do a lot of open mics. And then if you're sort of polished enough, or if you play covers and it sounds good enough, you can also play like the parties and balls and stuff.
Function gigs.
Yeah. And there's not a lot of money, but for a student, you're making loads of money playing music. So, or getting to go to these things for free as well, which is cool. So I did a lot of that, a lot of open mics, and then started playing a few what I would describe as more sort of cool original music gigs, where we realized that we should be showing our original music more to people. But even then, not much of that. It was only when I went to London that I started doing proper like gigs, like headline shows and stuff.
Sure, but I mean, at least the period that you spent at university, that was like, I suppose, and I'm assuming that was the time when you kind of understood that this is something that you could do, that you were gaining your confidence, playing a lot of gigs.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. But then when you moved to London, tell us about the London scene, the music scene. It's something I know something about as well, but I just want to get your take on it. Yeah,
so the thing that just strikes you straight away is just as soon as you start finding opportunities to play, you realize just how much there is to do. I think about it now, and I could probably play a different venue every night for a month, no problem. And that's why like people like Ed Sheeran, starting out will sort of do that, and not just in London, like around the UK, but especially there. There's when you're just starting out, I still think open mics are a good place to start because you meet a lot more people, because every act will probably bring a few friends, and then you'll just meet loads of randoms. But if you want to get onto like a bill with other bands and start meeting some promoters, and there's just so much. And so there was generally, I felt pretty good quality of sounds. So there were fewer technical problems with sound, which is good. So you can focus more on just playing. I probably underestimated, even at the time, but definitely before I went to London, just how much practice I needed on stage. It's only now am I really forcing myself each gig to the next one to just improve and find ways to improve my stage performance or my technique or whatever, or my interaction with the crowds. And this is after hundreds of gigs. So, I think that's one of the best things about having so many opportunities is you've got so many chances to get better. But just meeting, you'd meet random people and you'd meet the cool people at all these gigs. You'd play a gig and think, oh, there's not going to be anyone there. Let's just play it anyway. It's good to, practice some new songs. And somebody would be there who ran like a video session, who was like, oh, I'd love to get you around my house and film a cool session with you guys. And, things like that would just happen and you could just see where it goes. And I've still got really good friends from that period who I met at those gigs. So cool.
Obviously, another thing about London is that, there's a lot of competition when it comes to performing and stuff. There's literally like tens of thousands of guys just like you with the same goal, similar format, either, playing solo or bands. Did you ever feel discouraged by that?
I never thought about it as
a competition.
I never thought I'm playing at this bar tonight and there are 30 other gigs happening of similar music to say. I never thought about that. I just thought, who do I know who might not be busy tonight, who might want to come and see? And we had a bit of a transition moment where we went from, a gig every week or every 2 weeks at least to we'll just do one big show every couple of months, and saw our crowds obviously get a lot bigger because people were like, okay, these guys are starting to go somewhere, and we were just putting in good crowds for our own music, which is nice. I never really like to compare with other people, and I think if, for example, I'd maybe done the same thing in Brighton and got to the sort of top of whatever the scene in Brighton looks like now, and became the band that all the local press and radio were championing, maybe I could have like a bigger national audience now than I do there. But I didn't think about it, and I think it's good not to think about it too much from an emotional point of view. Because what you really want to do is think, oh, there's all these artists in London, so many people to learn off. I also went to a lot of gigs around that time, and I'd watch my friends' bands and other random bands, and that's the best thing you can do, is to just expose yourself to all of this stuff.
Cool. Tell me about the biggest gig you've ever played.
If you mean in terms of audience size, I've never played to thousands of people. It is like one of my ambitions to play like a really, really big, festival, kind of like thousands. That's not quite happened yet. But I remember playing, it was quite cool. It was quite random. So the Cambridge Union is like the debating society in Cambridge, and they've got quite famous people coming, speaking them every term. So quite a big deal. And there was a debate that was, this house believes that classical music is irrelevant to today's youth, or something like that. And I remember before the debate itself, they wanted to get some classical music and some non-classical music. And we used to play quite a lot of gigs at the Union. They did a lot of like music events, and we had friends organising. So they asked, do we want to represent non-classical music? And it was quite cool because the chamber, as they call it, is big. I think it's like several hundred people, and it was completely packed because Stephen Fry, who's obviously a national treasure in the UK, was on the classical music team for the debate. So we basically got to open for him.
Wow.
Debating. And that was a really cool gig because it was absolutely rammed, and also just completely silent. It wasn't like having a big crowd where there's a bit of a buzz and, obviously a lot of people watching. We were enclosed in people in all the galleries as well. So they were kind of everywhere. It was like an amphitheater. And I remember that being very nervous for that gig. And that was kind of when we were just starting out as well. So that was quite cool. I've played a couple of cool festivals in the UK, not on like main stages, but, Secret Garden Party before it stopped, and Cambridge Folk Festival and things like that, which were really good.
Do you remember the conclusion of that debate?
I think classical music won. Because his speech was amazing. He honestly was just. I remember. Obviously I love classical music, and it was a bit of a fun debate, and the outcome doesn't really matter. It's more about like the speakers. But he gave one of the most amazing speeches / debating performances I've ever seen. And it was,
When you were studying violin, you went to music school, right?
I was basically doing it as I was having music lessons whilst at school.
Okay, so those are private lessons. No. Do you wish that you went to like a proper music academy?
Yeah.
Or how would you, compare those two things? Teaching yourself how to play an instrument versus getting the full package, kind of.
I think the way I would love to do it, and this is still possible for me, luckily, is learn the instrument first. Spend several years just exploring it, listening to music, and what I did was I basically got handed the guitar, and on day one I was like, I'm going to start writing songs, which I think is good. 5 years of that, and they were all pretty awful. So the first 5 years are unusable. But which is
disposable,
which I'm quite proud of, actually. There are hundreds of songs I can throw away. But I think after that period, what would be great is to then look at what you know and be like, okay, what's the answer? It's almost like looking at the answers after you've tried them first, and learning a lot of how songwriting theory works. And same with lyrics. Like I never had any formal training in how to write lyrics. It was always just reading a lot, listening to lyrics, analyzing what I liked about them. I had a few I've had a few friends over the years who've been incredibly useful to talk to about lyrics. Like one of my girlfriends when I was at university, my girlfriend when I was at university, she was an English literature student, and she was amazing at explaining what made lyrics good or not. And so I learned a lot of her.
Okay.
And then, I think you can then have a period of learning and sort of seeing what people are doing, and then return to your sort of own learning process and exploring again, but knowing the rules, having explored a bit yourself first.
Have you ever dabbled with poetry?
No.
So how would you compare poetry versus lyrics?
Yeah, I was actually talking to someone about this the other day. I've written a lot of fiction, so I've done short stories, and I've tried writing a couple of novels, which is cool. I think it's just that I love fiction and prose more than I like poetry, but I can appreciate very, very good poetry. I think the difference is just with music, you can fall back on the music a little bit. I do think poetry, the words just have to be that much better.
Yeah.
That's the simple answer. But obviously the music constrains the lyrics as well. So it's it's got its own challenges.
Yeah.
I've just always thought I'd rather be writing lyrics than writing poetry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that, lyrics have like this, another dimension to them. Because you can like take one line, use it as a thesis and repeat it in a song, which makes more sense. If you put it on paper and call it poetry, you're just repeating one line over and over again. And repetition plays a role in poetry as well. But I mean, even pronunciation, and with lyrics, you can you have more elbow space, I guess. You don't need to, not everything has to rhyme exactly. So it gives you a bit more freedom.
I actually would say that the biggest leap in improvement I think I had in my lyrics because I've tracked quite granularly how my lyrics have changed over time, and I looking back noticed a big step up because what I was writing before, I just don't think it was very good. Was letting go of the need to rhyme everything, and as soon as I used it as a tool rather than as something I had to do, it just drastically improved everything. So that's a point that I would always tell people if they're just starting out writing lyrics. I'd say don't worry about whether words rhyme or not. The most important thing is the meaning and coming up with an original way of expressing a meaning. I think it's quite a big point.
Yeah, I think that combination of having good solid meaning to the lyrics, but also writing the words in a way that it rolls off your tongue really nicely. I think that's important when it comes to lyrics. Let's talk about the obvious topic of what the hell are you doing here? Like in Latvia, what are you doing here, and what do you think about our sweet little country?
Yeah. So it's kind of annoying actually, because just at the moment that I started playing gigs, and I had a couple of shows in the centre and drew 20. I've probably played to 20-30 people now, which is not bad for starting out in a new city. Yeah, it's a good place to be. Then everything locked down and music stopped, and I've spent the last 3 months working really hard on building up my sort of video profile. So working on vlogs, recording songs for YouTube, and obviously doing a lot more songwriting. And so I don't feel like I've had an opportunity to explore enough, because just at the point that I was starting to get out there and show my songs to people, I had to stay at home for a long time. That notwithstanding, obviously now that opportunity is going to come. And so at the moment, I really like how much more of a community there is. People I think are more interested in what other people are doing here than in London. Like you said, there's so much music going on. You're always going to meet people in London who are interested, but they're just not. It's I don't want to say this disparagingly, but they're almost taking it all for granted because there's so much of it. Yeah. Whereas here, there's more of a sort of community of musicians, and everyone's very friendly and willing to kind of give you loads of advice about good places to play. So I really like that about Riga, and I haven't got enough experience to draw on otherwise to really answer the question properly. Yeah.
So if we weren't in this situation with the virus and everything, what would have your summer looked like and the rest of the year?
To be honest, I don't know, because I also kind of move around a lot anyway. So I don't know how long I would be staying in Riga.
Okay.
possibly into the summer, and then maybe spend some time in the UK again. I've also got a lot of friends in the UK and in Berlin now who listen to my music but haven't seen me play live as a solo artist. And so I would have gone back at some point to do a proper show in London and, you know, like a release show for the EP, for example. Instead, now I'm, you know, exploring how to create more of an online audience, like I think a lot of people are. Yeah, I don't know what would have happened without that otherwise. Yeah, it's quite hard to say because I was in a bit of a transitional phase anyway when all this kicked off. So it's just meant I've had to rethink how I sort of put my music out there. But where I'd be living, what I'd be doing exactly. Yeah.
Have you listened to Latvian artists?
A few that you've introduced me to. So like local musicians, like the guys from Pacific K, for example, really cool music. I love their stuff actually. Reminds me of Ben Howard's second album, which is one of my favorite albums. So yeah.
Cool.
But I've listened to like bits and pieces of Latvian music. And I know there's kind of like a strong folk tradition as well. But I've almost kind of moved away from folk as a genre. Recently because I was doing it so much before in indie folk. So it's a bit of a tricky one. Yeah.
In terms of songwriting, is there a genre that you'd like to give a go at besides folk, indie, and you know like this
the stuff I'm doing now? Yeah, that's a good question. I've also over the last few years done quite a lot more sort of function work, doing like pop, and part of that is singing like hip hop. And I think it just I want to learn more about how hip hop songwriters write. That would be my next step for like teaching myself a style or whatever. Because my knowledge is, despite singing quite a lot of it for functions, it's all the mainstream stuff. I've not gone like deeply enough into hip hop. So that probably would be where I'd want to explore next.
Like what, for example?
Yeah,
Sugar Hill Gang.
no, genuinely, and like I was sort of listening to like early like Dr. Dre because you know there's like a whole genre of hip hop that stems from that sort of, you know, those recording sessions where he was like getting everyone in, and so I'd probably start there and you know almost do a bit of a history of hip hop from that point on. I don't know, it's a difficult one. I kind of need to just explore the genre more deeply.
But you would do that just to kind of you would do it for the purpose of writing lyrics, right? You would, is
no, more like how hip hop songs are constructed as well. It's like I'm sort of on this journey of like self-teaching myself more, and I don't want to be like too narrow, and I still feel like I'm in the apprenticeship phase of my music career, so like still learning, and it'd be good to just take something I'm really, really not familiar with and explore it in a lot more depth. So it's not for any particular reason, it's more just, you know, immersing myself in something different. Is there one artist or singer that you've kind of tailored your voice and songwriting style to? Or is it just a mix of things? I think it's a bit of a mix of things, but the one artist that I keep coming back to and thinking I probably write a bit like them and sound a bit like them and the style as well is Kings of Convenience. And they were sort of indie folk, but quite rhythmic, light indie folk, very guitar heavy, and you know, bits of strings here and there. But it's also the way they write the lyrics, just very. They almost just make very simple statements of morality, and I don't know. They create these kind of like warm stories around these quite simple ideas. It's really hard to explain, but I've been listening to them a lot again recently, despite it. So Kings of Convenience were the band that when Vedantha and I started playing, people were like, "Oh, this sounds a lot like them," and I had no idea who they were. So I listened to them and was like, "Oh, they've nicked our idea before we did it." But I think they're probably the closest to what I write. So looking back at your journey so far, you've been writing music for how long? 15 years? Yes. Yeah. What would you have done differently? Yeah, again, I've thought about this quite a lot in the last few months, and I think just learning more things quicker. So like exposing myself to more styles of music earlier and wanting to know in more detail I think I almost, I didn't go, oh, I really want to know how they do that. I sort of, I like we talked about earlier, I came onto different styles, like one after another, and until I got shown the right music in a certain genre, I wasn't interested in it. Like I'd probably just want to earlier get into everything and, learn how people write, learn how different genres write. Other than that, I think I definitely want to start writing with more people a lot now. And again, I always wrote with the same guy because I was in a band and things were going well. And I was just so lucky that I met somebody at university that I had such good chemistry with. And there'll be a lot of artists that are very, very, very successful, even listening to the script, they write really well and they're in the same family. People will meet the right person quite early on in their career. But I think I now want to try writing with other people more and do more like co-writing sessions.
See where that takes you.
And see where that takes me, yeah. Because you learn off other people as well. I think that's one of the best ways to learn songwriting is to watch other people do it in the room. So, yeah.
Besides wanting to constantly improve your lyric writing and, guitar playing and everything, is there another kind of aspect to music that you want to kind of pick up? For example, like production, getting into like sound engineering maybe?
Yes, I've been trying to teach myself how to record my own stuff but basically I'd like to take stuff to a producer with an arrangement already there. Okay. So I use Logic at the moment and just create demos from scratch, and I've been playing a lot more with electronic percussion and creating my own beats. And I'm now teaching myself just how to do that better. And I think when you're not very skilled in mixing especially, you probably rely too much on adding more elements. So, my approach would be, okay, I've got my voice, I've got my guitar, I just need to add a whole bunch of other instruments to make the arrangement sound good. What I want to do is be able to take 2 or 3 or maybe 4 instruments and make that sound really good and full. And I think that's the next production skill that I want to learn.
So just to finish off, do you have any advice for up-and-coming songwriters on songwriting? And also, do you have any advice for Latvian artists who want to perform, say, in the UK?
Yes. So to answer your second question first, sure. Definitely go to London and just be super friendly and don't worry about this whole people in London are really unfriendly. Like if you in the music scene, everyone is passionate about it and wants to talk about it, and just make as many friends as possible, try as many different venues as you can. There are so many open mics. There are so many places that are happy to just have new people play. So my advice would be do it and just be very open-minded about it. That's probably quite vague advice. I wish I could be like, this is the place you need to go first. But it changes quite quickly as well, the scene, in terms of your first question and what advice I would give to songwriters just starting out, probably everyone says write as much as possible. And I agree with that. It's like the classic advice is just write and release as much music as you can, which is what I'm trying to do now. But I think part of that is also, it's not just so you can improve and learn and write with people. I think just take the pressure off your own music. Don't be too emotionally attached to your music. And I know that sounds really weird because it is a part of you. It's like your emotional, output or whatever. But firstly, if you put out a song and people don't like it, it feels like an attack on you, and I don't think that helps anyone. I think you need to be very objective. You really need to be able to step back and look critically at what you're doing, and that will help you get better quicker, and that will also help you work with people better. But the other thing is, if you're in the middle of a song and you're trying to write the best song you can, being too attached to one particular idea can drag the song in the wrong direction. And you need to be able to sort of, again, within a song, as well as looking at a whole song, be quite objective and say, like, step back and be like, is this definitely the best thing for this song? Just because I like that one lyric, do I need to keep it there? Or could the song be better without it? That would be my advice, basically. Be more objective, Yeah.
Well, cool, man. Our time's up. But I'm glad that you're my friend and we can keep on talking about this. Keep on talking about this stuff. We still have to write something together.
Well, we're going to do a co-writing session. I might even put it on my vlog.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
We can come up with something really nifty.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks for coming over to Domofons. I think having you part of everything is really valuable. And, yeah.
No, thank you so much for having me. And
of course, it's a pleasure.
It is so nice to be welcomed into the sort of, what you guys are creating here in Riga, and as a UK artist, it's really lovely. So thank you for having me.
Cool, man. Forši, jā, tā bija saruna Nedu, angliski. Paldies, ka jūs pievienojāties mums šodien, un tad jau līdz nākošajam podcastam. Paldies. Čau. Cool. How was that?